2, 3, break. Dedicating that seminal intro by the B-Boys to referee Roberto Rosario Jr., as break was the only instructions programmed into his CPU by the Matchroom IT infrastructure engineers. Coup d'etat of boxing back. Chairman of the board, corruption in boxing, and the CEO, official scorecard boxing science, welcomes everybody. How you doing, official?
Break! Doing wonderful. yeah, crazy referee. Break. I'm doing well.
It's good to be back discussing boxing in unison. It's been a little while. Apologies to everybody that we couldn't maintain a regular schedule with the both of us, but both of us have tremendous work schedules, busy lives, etc. So it's very difficult, but an action-packed boxing weekend. It was actually a boxing overdose. Sort of 10, 11 hours of continuous boxing. And we had everything. We had ankles snapping, we had balloons popping, we had so-called professional boxers going down like they've been mauled by a grizzly bear from a punch that hit their motherfucking forearm. We had YouTubers fighting retired MMA fighters with their bellies hanging over their waists. We had Al Bernstein getting high from weed smoke being blown in his face. It was quite a roller coaster of crazy boxing all over the place. So we want to welcome everybody who's joining us in the live YouTube version of the show for what should be a pretty entertaining X number of hours. We'll just leave it as like that. We had cards from Miami, Florida, Matchroom Boxing. We'll then switch over to a PBC card, and we also had a debacle on Triller, which was quite frankly an embarrassment. And no reason why Eddie Hearn didn't want to compete simultaneously with the Triller card, because who the hell is going to pay to watch a Demetrius Andrade fight? But anyway, we'll get into it. Miami, Florida. Liam the Machine Williams from Wales, coming off 7 straight knockouts, was challenging for his second world title up against undefeated American Demetrius Andrade, the 2-weight world champion, defending his WBO title. Don't ask me for the how many times. Won a 154 belt, vacant belt when a Russian vacated. Vanes Motorosian for the vacant belt, since moved up, and he won yet another vacant belt against Walter Cannon Dokma from Namibia. But lackluster opposition thus far, but finally he was stepping in the ring with somebody who had genuine belief, desire, ambition. Too many boxing fans don't really understand too much about Liam's background, saying that he had 2 defeats, but if you analyze those defeats, Liam really should have been an undefeated fighter coming into this fight, having first time he was leading 8-0 on the scorecards before Liam Smith inflicted one of the most cynical, premeditated fouls you can imagine, which split open his eyelid, almost exposing his eye. Hence, his corner had to stop the fight when I felt Liam was. It was a shutout up until that point. Liam was just outboxing Liam Smith comprehensively. But unfortunately for Liam, his corner intervened to stop the bout rather than the referee establishing the injury and then hence calling an immediate sort of break to the contest, as Liam clearly couldn't have continued, hence risking blindness. But they They ran the fight back. Different sort of fight. Liam Smith was better in the fight, but I still felt Liam Williams outboxed him. Majority decision went to Liam Smith, who was the bigger Frank Warren fighter. They were both Frank Warren fighters, but there was more so-called upside on Liam Smith. So Liam Williams was a little bit too passive then, sort of accepting defeat. But since moving up to 160 pounds at middleweight and linking up with Dominic Ingle, has implemented a totally different mindset, has become a pressure fighter, front foot bully, so to speak. Physique has definitely improved, and his punching power has definitely got better. It appears he could punch back then, but he was a bit more of a boxer stroke puncher back then. But now he's become an aggressive walk down pressure fighter, combination puncher, body puncher. Not had a lot of rounds, just been knocking out people, but not really stellar opposition. I guess the one comparison you can make, they both fought Atlantis Fox, 6'4" freak middleweight. Demetrius just coasted to victory, didn't look spectacular. But Liam Smith on the other hand, destroyed Atlantis in a few rounds. So he definitely made the statement. So coming into this fight, Liam Williams was flying out to Miami, Florida, and that was always the worry. Liam mentioned that Matchroom Boxing tried to restrict their entry into Florida to a maximum of 7 days, but Liam didn't follow those instructions. He independently paid for both him and his close team to arrive in Miami 4 days before, so they had an extra 4 hours to acclimate. 4 days, my apologies. Because of the time difference and the fact that they weren't fighting, they were fighting almost synchronized with UK time, so the fight wouldn't be too late for boxing fans in the UK. They were looking to start the main event around 10 p.m, I believe, 11 p.m. for us over in Central European time. So it was mid to late afternoon, I believe, in Miami. So strange. Liam had to acclimate in 2 different sort of time zones to get back into sort of UK adjustment time as well. So kind of difficult for both of them, I guess. But Liam seemed fine, looked bang on the 160 pounds, looked good at the weigh-in. Didn't see any signs of him being sufficiently drained, whereas Andrade, he jumped off the scale straight away, went straight for rehydration fluid. He clearly looked like he's struggling at 160 pounds, and it's kind of easy to understand for a 6 feet 1 inch 33-year-old. Has a big frame. Fought at 164 pounds. What was it in the amateurs? So then he went back down to 154. He was a welterweight champion, amateur boxing champion. So he's definitely having to cut a lot of weight to maintain to 160 pounds. But that's his decision. There's nothing stopping him to going to 168. So you have to take the bout seriously as it is. And I don't know, official, before we get into the fight, did you see the weigh-in at all?
Sorry, have I seen what?
Did you see the weigh-in?
No, I missed it.
Okay.
Go on, tell me about it.
Andrade definitely he jumped off the scales like there was rats underneath his feet. Very different to Liam, who was reveling sort of in the occasion, but there was just no definition on Andrade. He just looked like initiated, definitely struggling at 160 pounds. But anyway, he probably rehydrated massively. I don't know what the weights was for the fight, but let's get into the fight.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to say that, I now remember you telling me about the weighting, about how he jumped off the scale right away. But I'll get into it later when it is my turn to talk about the fight.
Yeah, Liam Williams actually got into a pretty bad start. He had to make a good start, and in his recent sort of 7 fights, he's come off, made a very impressive sort of blistering start. But the problem with Liam, and I think it's technical, what I noticed straight away from round 1 is just too much gap between his guard. So his guard is actually porous. So if you're walking down a fresh fighter straight away, it's not the best fundamentals to have when you're fighting with somebody like Demetrius. And with Andrade, he's actually a right-handed southpaw, and he never really fights anything like a conventional southpaw. You don't see Andrade trying to establish lead hand control, lead foot control. It was actually Liam Smith who was actually jabbing above Andrade's low lead hand. So it was Liam Williams who was actually getting lead hand control with his jab. And what Liam Williams was trying to do was walk, and his game plan was pretty linear throughout the fight, was to walk Andrade down, but as he's approaching, he would get lead foot control on the outside, so he would take a step to his left, and the objective being to try and avoid Demetrius's straight left hand. Because Andrade has 2 different types of left hand. Now he has a short, straight overhand left, which is his most accurate punch, but it's a punch with regressed power. And Andrade also has a looping overhand right, and that's his signature backhand punch. And when Andrade throws that punch, he doesn't throw it from a conventional guard with his elbows blocked. He'll load that punch by dropping his left hand by his waist and then looping that punch over like a gunslinger. And Andrade was firing that punch in this round when he was actually running around the ring. And then he'd put the emergency brakes on. Smith, he'll know that Liam would be following him, and then he'll be whipping that left hand over literally his right shoulder and catching Liam pretty consistently throughout the fight. But Liam, without a tight defense, wasn't trying to box into the contest. He was just trying to, maybe a little bit too emotional, just got a little bit too close, and Andrade was able to hurt him in the first. Backed up Liam, coming in with some wide hooks, but Liam was fortunate that there wasn't a lot of time on the fight. But Liam was still landing punches. He was landing the double jab and then right hand every time, and that was his key combinations throughout the fight. With Demetrius, he couldn't really get his jab going straight away, but after hurting Liam in the first round, he actually resorted to going back to his jab as opposed to finishing off his opponents with power punches. And that's been the main criticism from Demetrius in a number of fights with Maciej Szalecki and Walter as well. He tends to hurt a lot of his opponents very early when he still has sufficient energy. But he's a fighter, we know, is definitely susceptible in the mid to later rounds. He definitely runs out of energy, and given the fact that he's struggling for the weight, that's logical. And we could see very early on he was actually breathing after round 1. I'm not sure if you saw that when he was back with his father, he was breathing heavily even after round 1. Round 2, he managed to drop Liam with a conventional 1-2, finishing off with a nice straight left hand. As I mentioned, that's his accurate punch. It's a better punch. And Liam just clearly had no guard for that. He doesn't really snug his gloves together. It's not a tight high guard, and that is a technical problem that he needs to remediate. I'm not sure what the hell him and Dominic Ingram are doing in the gym if his sparring partners were able to breach his defenses by punching through the guard. I've noticed that Demetrius was also able to hook round his guard as well. So Liam and his guard is also vulnerable for the uppercuts that Demetrius was landing. Now with Andrade, as his right hand is his power hand, so his jabs are very hard, and his key punch being his right uppercut. Now, if Liam is taking a step to his left to start his attack, what Demetrius would do is that he would, when he is running around the ring, and there was a little bit too much of that, too much running, turning the back, he was dipping below the waist, too much smothering when he was running out of energy, when Liam was actually starting to land right hooks to the body. But what Andre would do is once he's actually running around the ring, he would stop, and then he would take a position to his right, knowing that when Liam would take a position to his left. So Andrade did that primarily to try and negate Liam's straight right hand, but then he would fire that right uppercut as a lead uppercut, and it would land consistently, and Liam just clearly didn't go to even a cross guard position to try and block that. It was almost like he could actually see the punch, but either his reflexes or he had confidence in his chin. We know he's got a very good tough chin, but for an athlete to be consistently taking that punch, and Andrade was definitely putting a bit of mustard on those punches, but Liam, you got to give it to him, outstanding conditioning. He took a lot of punishment, but the desire and this guy was definitely looking to knock out Andrade, and you've got to give him a lot of credit. But the referee just didn't allow Liam Smith to fight on the inside, which was his modus operandi coming into the fight. And when official scorecard and myself were talking about who the officials were installed for this fight, as soon as they mentioned the Rosario Jr., a nondescript referee who Matchroom had clearly sanctioned to prevent Demetrius and Andrade from engaging with Liam Smith on the inside, because we knew Andrade was not going to fight. He was going to clinch, but Liam was very dirty early on. Both fighters were dirty. Liam was using his head and he was using his elbow, and when Demetrius Andrade was clinching on the inside, Liam really should have been firing those uppercuts to try and break out of the clinch, but instead they were just jostling for position. But Andrade, with his hands all over him, referee tolerated that throughout. It was disgusting. Demetrius really should have been deducted a point, especially when Liam hurt Demetrius 2 or 3 times with a straight right to the body. You could see Andrade backing up on the ropes, Liam coming in, trying to land combination punches, right hooks to the body, double jab, right hooks to the body. Andrade immediately smothered, referee stopped it. Demetrius was able to get out of the corner, and that happened throughout the fight. So for me, this was disgusting. It's a complete contravention of the rules. Yet another Amero Bum being protected by the referee, not willing to trade and engage with Liam on the inside, not willing to fight. I don't know, very, very frustrating. Demetrius was just being comprehensively, I felt, being outworked throughout the fight. The DAZN commentators were inconspicuous to what Liam was doing. They were just simply dick riding Demetrius Andrade, admiring his running around the ring, calling it running and stopping on the sixpence, landing an overhand left. a disgusting commentary team who really should be extradited to Guantanamo Bay, you know, and never really released from there. Absolutely disgusting. Liam, I'd say Liam, apart from the first 2 rounds, he definitely came back in the 3rd and the 4th. Andrade hurt him again in the 5th. He was obviously dropped in the 2nd. But second half of the fight, Liam Smith definitely won. You can definitely make an argument that Liam Smith won. I felt 5, possibly even 6 rounds. And that is from watching the fight again and just looking at the punches being landed. He was landing clean headshots. He didn't do enough body work, but he was landing definitely body shots. And those body shots were slowing Demetrius down. Demetrius he was just simply pot shotting, running and pot shotting to survive, breathing heavily, expanding too much energy, running out of the ring, occasionally landing the more eye-catching uppercuts, which were hurting Smith. But Liam, in the second half of the fight, once he was receiving those blows, he was trash talking Demetrius, telling him to come on. So he weren't fazed by the punches. He was actually taking them well. I think the 10th round, when Liam hurt him badly, very fortunate that the referee intervened. Otherwise, Demetrius could have been stopped or at least knocked down in that round. But Liam also, I think, was hurt in the 11th, and it looked like to me that Liam, he definitely grappled on Demetrius and he tackled him to the ground. So you've got to remonstrate him on that as well. But that's when the fighter is actually hurt, smothering his opponent in the pocket, and that happens all the time. But Liam weren't running; he was willing to engage and sort of persevere and continue. And Demetrius Andrade, after the fight, I don't know what it is, touching gloves at round 12 and kissing Liam after the fight as well. I don't know what the hell was going on there, but I think the scorecards, two judges having it 118, 109, which is pre-populated scorecards, certainly had absolutely no reflection of the fight whatsoever. One of the other judges, I think they had it 116, 111, if I'm not mistaken, official, which I think is too far for Demetrius as well. But Liam Smith was never going to get a points decision victory. I think Liam realized that. But unfortunately, the referee subjugated his efforts, prevented him from working on the inside. Any sustained periods of domination he had when he had Demetrius hurt, the referee allowed Demetrius to smother, to clinch excessively without any warnings except 1 or 2 in the latter rounds, but nothing punitive, no points deducted. Demetrius dipping below the waist as well, which is ridiculous. And one thing I noticed with Demetrius in this fight is that he's not a counter puncher, and this is the reason why. When he's trying to evade punches, he tends, as a southpaw, to dip to his left. So he's going back and dipping on his back leg, literally. So his body is just completely out of position, and he can't counterpunch with even the left hook or even the right hook. So there are just so many technical and fundamental problems I see in Demetrius Andrade's game. That's not a world level skill set, in my opinion. He was, the earlier fight he had at 154 with Varnes, he was very fortunate that Varnes made the mistake of coming in as a counter puncher, and Varnes had dispensed with his jab. And when he dropped Demetrius in the first round, Andrade was trying to land a straight left hand, but Varnes countered with a left hook to drop him. But after that, Varnes, dispensed with his jab, and he was just looking for single knockout blows. And in that fight, Demetrius was able to outwork Varnes by around sort of 300 punches. So, he got the decision in that fight. But in this fight, it was Liam Williams was actually outworking him. But Andrade just can't counter punch. Tends to pot shots. Tends to use his greater sort of athletic traits. Has the size advantage. Has the length advantage. But he just doesn't do a good job in maintaining range as well, because carries his left hand so low. He'll only start jabbing once his opponent is hurt. He'll go into a square position and then start jabbing and hitting with the right hand once he's square, once he's known his opponent is hurt. But he won't use that jab, nor will he use the right hook against an orthodox fighter. And that's something you've got to do. If you know that an orthodox fighter is going to take lead position on the outside, why not come with a lead right hook to stop him taking that position on the outside? Doesn't do that. No lead hand control either. I don't know. I don't know what this reputation is with Demetrius as being some sort of a boogeyman over in the United States. No one's ducking him. They'd actually made the Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo fight before. I even remember that posters were actually drawn up, but Demetrius backed out at the last minute, declining a $250,000 payday. So he backed out of that fight once. So you can't take anything that what the fighters and his promoters are saying about opponents ducking him. But all in all, I give tremendous credit to Liam Williams. He put up a decent fight. Just too many technical fundamental errors. He didn't adjust his game plan. It was pretty linear throughout, and he must have known that the referee was not going to allow him when the referee was consistently breaking. And Liam can definitely box as well. He should have tried to box, and he can actually stand up on his toes and box laterally. That's what he was doing at 154 pounds. To say to Demetrius, look, if you're running, I'm just going to maintain the center of the ring. I'm not going to follow you around the ring. You come to me. Try and alter the tactics, trying to get Demetrius to open up an exchange. And then he had the power as well. But maybe the damage he took in the first and second round, took a little bit of the steam out of his punches. There wasn't really that same snap, but he was definitely through sort of attritional punching, he was definitely hurting Demetrius throughout the fight. So I don't know, just left a very, very disgusting taste in my mouth. I thought Liam Smith, I'm not sure whether he won the fight outright, but 6 rounds on my card, I think he definitely deserved a lot more than what he received. And all in all, it was just an abomination to boxing. Vishal, over to you, my man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so first thing, the weight in. It's funny because it clearly reflects to how Andrade fights, meaning that he's not really willing to finish or able to, at least it looks that way, not able to finish his opponents once he gets them hurt. But in fact, I would say, yeah, it's definitely due to him cutting a lot of weight, looking very big in the ring. And so what he's basically doing, he's preserving his energy, and that's why he's not really willing to engage, even when he stuns them with some serious punches. And it was seen in this fight against Liam Williams as well. Now, yeah, I would say the percentage of the fight that Andrade spent bending below his waist, or below the waist, the amount of time he spent with his head being aligned with his opponent's crotch is more than the time Madison Ivy or Nicole Aniston spent, looking at guys' crotches. So And you were so spot on, because he's not a natural counter puncher, because it was clear the way he's leaning over his, not even over his back foot, but even behind it. He's clearly not in a position to throw a counter punch, you know. So, and I do agree with a lot of things that you said about this fight, because I saw it the similar way. Now, watching it live, I was paying attention more to what I mean. I was paying attention to what both fighters were doing, but let's say Liam Williamson, just like you said, while he was jabbing, he was stepping to his left, outside of the southpaw Andrade's lead foot. But also, when since the third, the fourth round on, I would say, when he figured out that Andrade was leaning so much over his back foot, he was having some real success with his double straight right, short straight right, not really powerful, but to get him off balance. And that was one thing that Liam Smith was clearly doing well, but the problem with his game plan, or the lack of it, or maybe it was not the lack of game plan, but due to the limitations of William Smith, Liam Williams, sorry, is that he was not able to, to use it to the fullest. Because if it was someone like Golovkin in front of Andrade, who everybody's saying is being ducked by Triple G. I mean, while he was sending offers for years to Andrade and the other middleweights. I mean, it's a complete nonsense, man. Because you remember the breakdown we did on Triple G recently on our like 10 episodes ago, maybe, on the coup d'etat of boxing, the way Triple G would jab, and then make a pause, feint a punch, and just step in or sideways just to get you off balance. That's exactly what he would be doing the whole night against Andrade, making him lean over his rear foot and be off balance, and throw mean hooks. I mean, catching him with all kinds of punishing and terrible punches. And by the way, I'm kind of scared for my life, because I do think there may be a hitman breaking into my house, because I'm hearing some
Yeah, I heard it.
noises. Yeah,
It's
Eddie Hearn
it's Leon.
definitely said something.
Leon has come out of retirement.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, there is a lot of things to say about this fight. So Andrade, I would say he started it well, and within the first 30 seconds, he clearly caught Liam Williams cold, and the moment he hit him first with the uppercut, and then followed it up with the overhand rear left hand, clearly made Williams lose his strength, his balance. It was clear that he didn't have his legs for the following 2 rounds underneath him. Clearly shaky, his punches didn't have any power. Then the third and the fourth round, there were clear Williams' rounds. And yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was interesting paying attention to what Andrade was doing. Not that it was great, but well, as Max Kellerman would say, the story of the fight. No, I'm joking, but at the beginning, what Andrade was doing, yeah, he caught him cold. Then he was leaning outside of Williams' lead foot to sneak in that uppercut. And just like you described corruption, Liam Smith, the way his guard is, he may keep his gloves tight, one next to the other in front of his face, but there's a lot of room in between his elbows. And it reminds me of myself, because I was making the same mistake in the gym for the first couple of years when I started boxing. And all I needed was a couple of real serious sparring fights in the gym, with the guys who would throw the uppercuts and body shots on me to correct it and keep the elbows stuck in. And that was clearly something that Williams was unable to do. Yeah, you want to say something?
Agreed. And he Liam just does not roll with the punches as well throughout the fights.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely non-existent head movement, or you would say so. But yeah, to go back to Andrade, he's very good with his movement, lateral movement. He has the foot speed. So what he's able to do is to quickly change the angles, and in a split second plant his feet and throw a punch. So it was the lead right uppercut, also the rear straight left or the overhand left, all the punches that you already mentioned. So that was a good thing that he was doing, but
But
uh,
doing a highly Gebri Selassie, nah.
yeah, yeah. But I'll get to his defense and the things he was doing, the bad things he was doing in the fight in a moment. Just want to say that, well, the way he was fighting from the offensive standpoint, uh, well, I would say that after the first 2 or 3 rounds, he abandoned his jab, while in the beginning, in the initial rounds, he was trying to provoke Liam's jab a bit, to open up with his own jab. So that was the way he would lean to his right and throw that huge uppercut. And but since then he abandoned his jab, or he would stick it, extend it, in the illegal way, the way you're not supposed to do in a boxing ring, to stick your jabbing hand and keep it in front of your opponent's guard. uh, and Then a couple of good things that he was doing, he was able to, yeah, so his offense. Okay, you mentioned the rear straight left, the rear overhand left, the right uppercut. Also, he would, from time to time, he would slip, because the way he was defending when he was not running away, which was a huge portion of his defense, running away, right? But sometimes he would slip both Liam Smith, Williams's ones and twos over to his left. So not the usual right to left lateral head movement, but instead he would evade both punches by leaning over to his left. And sometimes he would lean after Williams's jab or right hand, and come up with the rear left uppercut to the body. Around the middle rounds, he started doing it on the regular basis. And then he would, I saw him even, modifying that, accustoming Liam Williams with those rear left uppercut counters to the body. Next thing he would do, he would also slip a jab, but instead of throwing that counter left uppercut, he would throw a rear left overhand around his guard while stepping to the right. So I thought that was a nice thing that he was doing, varying his punches. It was nice to see. But the problem was, his defense. And look, a couple of days ago, I was listening to, I think it was Bucho from BDA saying that Williams has a very good defense, which I would honestly totally disagree with Bucho, because Williams does fight in an extremely defensive manner, but I would say that the only good thing that I saw from him was his offense, and his defense is very bad. The thing is that he's very defensive, so he doesn't get punished a lot. That's the very reason why he's overly defensive. Plus, his stamina also is the reason. But yeah, if anything, a good thing I saw from him was his offense at moments, in spurts. While his defense, I don't like it at all, because whenever he was standing there in front of Williams, he was getting pissed up. He was getting hit with the right hook to the body, or just like I said, he always had the same way, the exact same way to defend from Williams's combos, from his one twos, leaning over to the left. And it was extremely easy to time. And another thing is that he doesn't even watch, for the punches. He doesn't keep his eyes on the opponent. So credit to him, he's physically gifted. He has extremely good reflexes, I would say. So he's quick to duck below and evade the punches that way. But many times, he would act as he was scared, so scared of getting hit. He was not even looking the position of Williams, of his chest, of his arms. Sometimes Williams would step in without throwing a punch, and Andrade would be already ducking below, looking at the canvas with his eyes on the canvas, etc. So in my opinion, very terrible defense. And the good thing is that Williams was, in my opinion, technically very limited. So he was not able to follow up when he got him off balance, something that, like I'm saying, Gennady Golovkin would exploit to the fullest. And so watching it live, I was thinking that Williams was winning maybe 4 rounds, 5 rounds, something like that. But rewatching it, I realized that Andrade was getting hit even more than that. And yeah, 6 rounds for Williams, I would not be surprised at all, man. Because yeah, I would say, you know what's the thing with this fight? The most dominant rounds were the rounds that Andrade won, especially the one with knockdown, and because of his flashy punches that were really stunning Williams from time to time. But Williams was outworking him, especially in the later stages of the fight. And another bad thing about Andrade and his defense. Okay, he would use the lateral movement and get on the outside, sometimes on the outside of Liam Williams's lead foot, and sometimes he would counter him while pivoting and turning on the outside angle. But many times while he would turn, Williams was turning right with him, and that's exactly how he caught him a couple of times. First time in the 3rd round, Andrade nails him with a very short, sweet uppercut, and goes to the blind angle behind the lead foot of Williams. But Williams turns with him and nails him with the short overhand right. And what Andrade is doing, he's immediately clinching, well, which is understandable because he's hurt. But many times he was really clinching for nothing. Clinching probably because he was tired and didn't want to expend his energy. And it's funny, many times the referee would scream, break, break, break. And one time he was screaming at them, telling them, you should listen to me when I said break. you break. And Liam Williams, one time, he was so frustrated, he shouted back at the referee saying, I'm trying."
Yeah,
And yeah, fantastic tackles from Andrade. But what I want to say is that, yeah, man, I mean, I like the way he was boxing the first 2 rounds, but man, we are talking about some overrated fighter, and not a boogeyman. He's a boogeyman for to your enjoyment of boxing, because he stings the joint out. Yeah, he's technically physically talented. Sorry, he's very quick. He can stun even Golovkin or Canelo. He could definitely catch them with some quick punches out of nowhere and make them look bad at spots. But man, strategically, he's unable to be a real problem. And I'm wondering
yeah.
if there's anything else I wanted to say, but I would say, well, it would be everything I wanted to say about this fight, I think.
You know, official. What I found very unusual with this whole card was Eddie Hearn stepping into the ring and plotting a future career path for Demetrius Andrade before the bout had even been contested. It was almost as if Eddie was almost prognosticating, it was almost a premonition of what was going to happen in the fight, that Liam Williams' efforts would be swindled and Demetrius would progress, because for a promoter to be talking about Andrade's future fights before his current bout has even been contested, what the fuck was that all about?
Yeah, good question. Man, sorry, by the way, I don't mean to interrupt, but I forgot to say something off topic. Um, so, for anybody who doesn't know it, our friend Gonzalo, who's a panelist on BDA boxing, and a really great guy. We had pleasure of talking with him for a couple of years already. A really good, wonderful guy, and a funny guy to talk boxing with. Well, he's having problems. I mean, he's a U.S. Army veteran. He's Mexican American, and he had his first child, his first son, but they're living in the Philippines, and so he's not covered. He would be covered, all his expenses would be covered if they were in the US, but they are not covered overseas, and he's living with his newborn son and his family in the Philippines, and is having some huge hospital bill to pay. And so I would really love to urge anyone who's being able to donate to his GoFundMe page, everyone to its own capabilities, so link would be in the description, and I'll mention it a couple of more times during this stream. But yeah, there many other channels are trying to help out because the bill is huge.
Yeah,
um
the,
Newborn son
the
had
medical
some
costs. Yeah.
complications. Yeah. So and I would say, being that we are unable, we don't have the super chat option yet. Our friend Unravel Boxing Tuck, aka Mark, on his own stream, so he's doing his fundraising as well. Big props to him and to all the other channels for doing so. So the best thing would definitely be to go to the link in the description and in the chat room to drop anything you're able to drop to cover his hospital bills, because they're huge. But in case your only option is super chat, go to Unravel Boxing Talk, and he's gonna be streaming for a couple of more days. He's been streaming for 3 days without any stop. So you can drop a super chat there and be assured that money will go to Gonzalo. If not, go to GoFundMe link in the description, and all the best to Gonzalo. And please, 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 everybody listening to this, it doesn't cost you anything to share the link for GoFundMe page. That's all. Sorry for interrupting. Corruption. Go on.
No, I was going to say Gonzalo's is one of the best natural boxing minds within the community. An individual who just genuinely loves boxing, and you can talk hours and hours with him, and really a fantastic guy. And it's a very sad situation that his firstborn was born prematurely and regrettably has been incubated in intensive care with various conditions, pneumonia, not abating, and hence the prolonged period and rising medical insurance costs. So yeah, everybody listening live now and later on, we would urge everybody to, even if it's a small donation, together if everybody within the community all contributes, then I'm sure the key is that medical treatment continues, and that's the sole purpose of this campaign. So yeah, we would echo those words, and please review the GoFundMe link at the bottom, and yeah, please make a donation. Thank you all for that. Okay. We were talking about Eddie Hearn in the ring, and making even a number of criticisms, even to his own fighters, and criticizing Gennady Golovkin for not even pursuing this fight. And this is something I wanted to cover because I'm actually glad that Golovkin is following his own path. For me, there is no legacy in fighting Demetrius Andrade and beating him for the WBO championship, a belt which is insignificant as far as I'm concerned. Gennady has already been the unified world champion, one belt short of becoming undisputed. And we've seen what the sanctioning bodies, and we've seen what promoters have done to prevent Golovkin from becoming undisputed. In the past, Billy Joe Saunders, that fight could have happened, but Golden Boy had intervened and threatened Golovkin that a fight in Kazakhstan with Billy Joe would severely compromise a super fight with Saul Alvarez, literally a financial blackmail, and Tom Loeffler even confirmed that as well. So Golovkin, we know what's happened with Canelo Alvarez in that he was cruelly denied 2 victories, and that includes the second fight. For all those who think that Golovkin lost, just go back and watch the second half of that fight. It was a pretty comprehensive one-sided fight. With the second half anyway. Canelo was good in the first half, no doubt, but 2 victories for Gennady. I think they did a poll of 60 fighters, ex-fighters, trainers, and those who were in the professional media, and 42 of them out of 60 had scored the second fight for Golovkin. And that's a wide poll of British, American, Mexican, etc. Just a wide random poll of fighters. So, and those in the media who definitely know their boxing. So that's an indication of how professionals who watch and score boxing all the time, that's their opinion. And so, but the second fight was close. But the point being that Golovkin the system has cruelly prevented Golovkin from fulfilling his aspirations, and now having a small equity deal with DAZN is pursuing his own agenda under some coattails of Eddie Hearn, who is there on the negotiating capacity, but Golovkin clearly is orchestrating his own path, and I respect that fully. Personally, I think a fight with Murata in Japan on New Year's Eve is a far better fight than fighting Demetrius Andrade on an Eddie Hearn predominant card, where you know Eddie Hearn is gonna feel that there's a little bit more upside in Demetrius Andrade than there is with Gennady Golovkin, who's in a similar position with Manny Pacquiao, in which I think Manny Pacquiao vacated his WBA regular belt. He wasn't stripped. Otherwise, you don't get a champion in recess. Manny is obviously looking at business continuity, the bigger picture. And the objective of freeing up that belt was to say to Al Heyman, fine, the belt's vacant. Ugas can be upgraded from regular to super. Errol Spence can claim that belt from beating Ugas in probably another compromise fight. Manny really doesn't give a fuck about that. And in return, Al Heyman would allow Manny to showcase, the number of signings he's had, and he's signed a hell of a lot of fighters from even Africa and Mexico as well, to put them on a PBC platform, to get them regular fights, get them paid, and Manny Pacquiao's promotional company to sort of grow and expand and get title fights and get some sort of recognition and get some traction within this promotional market. And with Golovkin, he has a number of young fighters as well, so he's looking at DAZN in that sense as well. I think he's expanding his group of fighters, so he's pursuing his own agenda, and I've got no problem with that whatsoever. And for Eddie Hearn to be laying shots at Golovkin, talking about how champions should be fighting champions, well, look at the junior flyweight division. DAZN have three of the four belt holders. Are we seeing any unifications between, Elvin Soto and Felix Alvarado and now Hirito Kyoguchi? And what we're getting now is nothing but frustration with Elvin Soto fighting yet another ex-former world champion. Kyoguchi being a late signing, so I'm not going to hold too much blame to him. But he had sufficient time in the past. They could have unified with Alvarado. Alvarado was willing to go to Japan to fight. Don't know why that fight didn't happen. So it's a very frustrating situation, and other fighters who can definitely come in contention are being blocked as well. So Eddie Hearn can spin, can hypnotize, can basically be a professional liar in the ring. There's just nothing but contradictions in his speeches. Andrade has already backed out of fights in the past. So, and talking about how Canelo Alvarez should be applauded, it's just amazing how he's just almost dispensed with Callum Smith, now jumped onto Canelo Alvarez, and even for the forthcoming Billy Joe Saunders fight, he's not even allowed Billy Joe to be installing, independent referees, lying to Billy Joe, and you can see Billy Joe's frustration. So Eddie Hearn has absolutely got no loyalty with his full roster of fighters. It's the specific fighters, and there's no doubt Alvarez, he's going to go to him like flies to shit, given the sort of revenues associated with Canelo. But Canelo doesn't really have a long-term contract. I think the third fight with Billy Joe is his last. So, but Eddie Hearn put all of his eggs in the basket with Canelo Alvarez, and I don't know. I just found that whole damage limitations exercise of trying to convince the public to take Demetrius seriously, I found that all almost laughable, official.
Yeah. Look, first of all, looking at it from Eddie Hearn's standpoint, I would say, not a bad thing to kind of put the pressure on even on your own fighters to make a big fight. But come on, we know what's happening. We already, well, you already explained it. Just explain what's happening. The WBO who's been fucking with Golovkin, and Golden Boy who prevented him from fighting Billy Joe just because he wanted to fight him 3 months before the first fight in between him and Canelo, and so they were kind of worried about him suffering the damage, the injury that would prevent him to participate in the super fight. It's a big load of crap, man. Me myself, I would like to see him against Murata more, bigger fight from when it comes to boxing, you know. Plus, second thing, it would be more exciting. Third, there would be more money involved. An interesting thing for DAZN Japan, to DAZN Boxing, for the whole company. And yeah, like you said, I mean, Golovkin clearly doesn't give a fuck anymore to be jerked off by all these guys, because while he was chasing the belts, he was not getting the respect he was deserving. Now at the same time we have Canelo, who back in the day when Golovkin was the one chasing the unifications of all the belts, was dropping his own belt in a trash can in order to avoid them. Now that Golovkin is past his prime and in a different weight class, Canelo is very interested in to be becoming an undisputed champion at 168. So a lot of nonsense from Eddie Hearn, from everybody, and especially from Golovkin's haters, claiming that he would be scared of Andrade. While that fight, I mean, he would just get Andrade's belt, and I think that at this point he's only looking for the biggest money fights in his division, you know. And that's a fourth reason why a fight between him and Murata would be more interesting. Uh, and yeah, plus, oh man, I think I forgot what I wanted to say. There was another thing that I want to mention about Golovkin, but go on. Hopefully, I'll try to remember and mention it later, possibly.
I mean, it was no surprise that Eddie never mentioned anything about Saul Alvarez literally avoiding Demetrius Andrade at two weight divisions at both 154 and 160. It doesn't matter that what you think if Alvarez would obliterate Andrade, and most observers do think that, but facts are facts. Canelo vacated and moved up, and at 154 pounds when Andrade was his mandatory, didn't want anything to do with that fight. When the belt became vacant, Liam Smith fought for the belt and won it. Then Canelo put his hat straight in the ring, came back down to 154 to fight Liam Beefy Smith, with no drug testing at the 12th hour, all cancelled. So Canelo could make the weight and win that belt. And then Andrade became his mandatory after. What did Canelo do? Vacate the belt and move up to 160 pounds. So
exactly, and
clearly, for whatever reason, Canelo and his advisors have never fancied the fight with Andrade. Maybe because it reminds him a little bit too much of Erislandy Lara and Austrian Trout, a similar sort of southpaw who will move around the ring and sort of pot shot and use his height and reach advantage. And you can clearly see that he has the ability to outbox a flat-footed fighter with an explosive fighter who once upon a time used to have severe gas tank problems, as it's indicative of an explosive fighter. But after the Miguel Cotto fight, Canelo's so-called stamina was remediated and he started standing up in the corner. Clearly the EPO was finally working, and Canelo now, you know, always tries to remind the entire boxing public that, you know, he has the ability to fight sort of 12 3-minute rounds consistently with no stamina issues. You know, all that languishing on the ropes he was doing with Golovkin as well when he ran out of energy in the first fight. This guy is an absolute embarrassment to boxing, but the way he's just fooled the general public, it's just. But we've spoken about it over and over. It doesn't matter. Let's get away from that topic. But with
Yeah,
Golovkin
but
and Morata, I've got no problem with that fight.
sorry, Joe.
You know what? If Golovkin wins a WBA fight with Demetrius, so what? What's the big deal? You know, they've already offered a fight to Jamal Charlo in the past, who declined it. So what the fuck is Golovkin going to do now? There's no way the Charlo is going to come over and fight. And Golovkin is not going to go over to Fox Showtime when he has an equity stake with DAZN. So those fights are not going to happen. You know, Golovkin is going to carry on extending his sort of middleweight record. You know, Morata in Japan that's a very dangerous fight. We know Morata is a completely different animal in Japan than when he travels overseas. And you got to admire Golovkin for going over to Japan and fighting him on New Year's Eve, which should be a spectacular card. So I've got no problem with that fight, you know, against a former Olympic gold medalist. You know, a tremendous inside fighter, body puncher as well. So stylistically official, that should be a spectacular fight for the boxing fans. So I've got no problem with that. Yeah, Golovkin will get a good payday, and he deserves a good payday after the troubles and the endeavors he's had from Germany to the UK, and he was fighting for next to nothing on a lot of the earlier cards, even when he was collecting the belts individually as well. So
He was
I've got
fucking
no
fighting
problem with
for.
that. Demetrius
He was
Andrade, if a fight was even offered to him, do you think he'd really take it? The way he backed out of the Jamal Charlo fight after that fight was all agreed, all of the artwork and that drawn up. So when somebody has a propensity to do that and just cancel the fight in the 23rd hour, then what's the point of fucking around with that? So we'll move on from that anyway. Anyway, have you got any closing statements to this whole middleweight fiasco, official, or should we move on?
Yeah, I would just like to add a couple of things. Yeah, so like you're saying, Golovkin used to fight for his for the name of his promotional company on the canvas and for free tickets, you know, ringside tickets. That's how much he was willing to get in the ring with all the best that were backing him. And I said it one time recently on Recognizes stream, and I'll repeat it here. Golovkin is not someone who's pretending to make fights on the social media, on Twitter, and acting crazy there on Twitter, calling out people that he doesn't have intention fighting. No, he's be doing his business in silence, like Trilogy. He's been doing that his whole career. I mean, he was saying that, not saying he actually did do that. He wanted to face Ward in the beginning when he came to HBO. Ward was one that said no. Then Ward was the one pretending that he sent him an offer, while in fact he was sending him a fake offer 17 minutes after Golovkin versus Lemieux fight was officially announced, sending a fake email while later admitting that even 168 would be too hard for him to make. So, and with the other fighters as well, Lara was always using his name when he was about to have his own fights, and being nowhere when Golovkin was free. Same for Andrade. Andrade got offers from Triple G's team as well, only that they were not published on Twitter. Not, I mean, Golovkin is that kind of guy. I'm not like trying to fanboy for him. Would I mind him fighting Andrade? Andrade, definitely not. I mean, but I certainly prefer the Murata fight. Uh, great money, great location against a very exciting fighter. Much better fight in my opinion. So yeah, all these fuckers can fuck off. Golovkin is a G.
Officially, it even begs the question as to why Golden Boy Promotions settled the lawsuit with Canelo Alvarez. Because I had a good look into that lawsuit, and from my recollection and my own analysis, neither the DAZN or Golden Boy were in breach of contract. Now, Canelo's lawsuit was with both Golden Boy and with DAZN, even though he never had a contract with DAZN. It was Golden Boy who had the contract with DAZN. So the initial lawsuit was dismissed based on jurisdiction, as the judge clearly didn't understand whether the lawsuit should have been submitted to a US court as a federal complaint or to a UK district court, as DAZN is the property of a UK-based private limited company. Now, if the Maloney Group, Canelo's advisors, had repackaged, kind of rechanneled their argument with the correct entities listed under the LLC companies for DAZN US, in my understanding of contracts and these sort of legal disputes, and what Canelo's main contention was, DAZN were not in contention or didn't contravene any contract. Now, we don't know the schedule of the remuneration, whether it's whatever $34 million in equal splits per fight. It could have been the case that if DAZN didn't accrue sufficient new subscribers for a certain month, that they could sort of backdate the payment, pay Alvarez, maybe a 15 million for one fight, like that mega fight with Avni Yildirim, which certainly warranted Canelo getting, $35 million. And say for a Billy Joe unification, and then perhaps so kind of incentivizing Canelo's pay based on the level of opposition and the revenue and the associated revenue that would generate, because the contract was not in the public domain, nor was it a contract that Canelo claimed that he had visibility of. So we don't really know. But DAZN would have known if they'd been breached, if they'd contravened the schedule of payments, then clearly they wouldn't have contested that. It wouldn't have gone to the initial district court, because they would have known they'd been in breach of contract. So I don't see them. I think Canelo Alvarez just got pissed off because, and this is the reason, I think, because he knows that Golden Boy Promotions will put him in hard. We know that Golden Boy Promotions wanted Canelo to fight Gennady Golovkin in the third fight, and that fight made financial sense, and it made sense from an entertainment capacity as well, also from the sense that the second fight was a fantastic fight, and it would have done good numbers, and it would have attracted, a whole range of new subscribers, or retained, had a very good retention rate if they had a previous upsurge in subscribers. So it made a lot of sense. But Canelo clearly didn't want a third life-threatening fight. a career shortening fight. So he clearly threw his toys out of the pram. And we know the situation with Yildirim. He wanted Yildirim first of all. DAZN rejected the fight. So why is Canelo being relieved of a contract and going back to DAZN, an entity who he actually submitted the lawsuit against? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But he knows no other promoter was going to pay him the sort of exorbitant amount of money that he's been requesting. But he clearly isn't recouping, because you could see the Danny Jacobs fight was an absolute failure. So DAZN, if they're still honoring the original terms as they were under Golden Boy, under Eddie Hearn, then to me that's just poor economics. That's not sound commerce from what DAZN are doing. But yeah, I can see no reason why Golden Boy would have settled it out of court. Oscar could have maintained it, but what would have happened? You would have had an unhappy Saul Alvarez on his cards, and he would have been refusing fights, which is legally he can legally do so. There's nothing saying that he has to fight with Golden Boy every year whatsoever. He would have just sat on the sidelines, and then eventually, if the contract had been third party assignable, which I think it would have, which it was, then Oscar clearly could have sold his contract to an ESPN or somebody else, or Star Boxing or World of Boxing, maybe even an Al Heyman slave contract. I don't know if Canelo would have accepted that. But yeah, it was kind of a bizarre situation. I really didn't know why it settled in, and I was surprised as well without even a motion being declared, in court. But Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya, the liability was on him because he'd guaranteed his company's liability for the residual amounts. And Oscar, we know his liability is on his cocaine habit, as we clearly saw in the Triller card. So he doesn't want to be financially exposed too much. But yeah.
Right, right. And you know what? Back in the day when everybody was talking about Canelo and Golden Boy parting their ways, many people were optimistic, saying that this maybe mean that Canelo is finally on a track where he is going to fight the best possible opposition, which, in my opinion, is the very opposite of what's actually happening. Because yeah, Golden Boy was babying him and keeping him safe, but at the end of they throw him in with old 35 plus years old Triple G, but they finally started, putting him in those fights, extremely hard fights. And Canelo with his contract on his own, for sure he would be satisfied with the least amount of risk, because he has that money guaranteed for each and every fight. I do believe. Now it certainly has to depend on what opponent is he fighting to a certain extent, for sure. But first of all, Golden Boy, as his promoter, he, of course they're willing to put him in the big fights, because unlike with Canelo and his guaranteed money, they would earn more by putting him in tough and not tough, not necessarily tough, but big fights that the public is interested in seeing. And on top of that, it's been always their kind of motto, or their style. They're kind of very similar to Top Rank. They can baby you and take their time with you, feeding you bumps, or taking you on a long ride, helping you develop. And then you're going to come to the point where it's sink or swim. And I do believe that's another parallel in between Canelo and Floyd, because the similar thing was happening in between Top Rank and Floyd Mayweather. And since Floyd parted his ways with Bob Arum and Top Rank, while you see how his career turned out, for sure he was fighting great names, but always past their prime, and so he was pretty much safe, you know. And I see something very similar with what's happening now with Canelo when he's a free agent or going signing on fight by fight basis. What do you think about it, corruption?
Ah, it gives me heart palpitations thinking of Alvarez.
But wouldn't you agree that his current route, is extremely similar to Floyd's own route
Yeah,
past
yeah,
Top Rank?
yeah. The
Mhm.
difference being is that there was variables in Floyd's contract, given pay-per-view revenue split, which he had the massive majority fighters. Some of the fighters would not even be entitled to a split of the pay-per-view revenues. But with DAZN, given that it's an application, its revenue is based on the gate sponsorship and monthly subscription, and that's a worse financial model, because with a pay-per-view you can gas that pay-per-view up the way Thriller has been doing recently, and it's variable. You can have even an absolute disaster like Terence Crawford and Victor Postol, or you can have, what Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. did recently with around, I don't know what it was, around 2 million. So the marginal risks is and the marginal revenues on a conventional traditional pay-per-view model is good, and I'm sure that's something Canelo would also like to go on in the future. But when you're incentivized, when you're guaranteed a huge minimum sum irrespective of the opponent, and that's what Canelo has got now with Eddie Hearn. Maybe they'll extend the contract, presumably, but why wouldn't you? I mean, if Canelo can get Rocky Fieldings and Avni Yildirim's and a whole bunch of fights with fighters having to take rehydration or dehydration clauses, then it's a
Yeah,
win-win situation for him. He's in a prime position. He can just do whatever the fuck he wants to, and that's exactly what he's doing, fighting now against a totally shot Billy Joe Saunders, who fought shit-facey Wasu or whatever for the vacant belt a number of years ago. And if you look at Shifat or Shitfat, whatever the fuck this guy's name is, I guarantee you, Shitfat now he's waxing car bonnets in Beverly Hills.
yeah, and man, there's a lot of confusing things happening, coming from Billy Hose. And I mean, first of all, yeah, people were very confused by what he was saying on the video. Was he sarcastic about basically admitting on the video that there's no way he wins the fight, and that he's coming just to collect his check? And now, just very recently, he announced that, and see if true that's what a snake Eddie Hearn is, because you would think at least he would root for his British fighters, etc. But Billy Joe is saying that the contract he signed to fight Canelo was based on no crowd money, and while now they want him to stick to the same contract, but on the other hand, um, they are going to fight in front of a big crowd, in front of 70,000 people. So that's fucked up. Do you have anything to say about it before I ask you another question?
Now carry on.
Okay, so yeah, TMT, his comment that I highlighted, he's saying the zone boxing on its last legs. They have to resort to protect the Demetrius Andrade, who is broadcasted at English hour because no one gives a fuck about him in the US. Well, I'll just add that this is not the first time the zone is doing something like that, because we remember very well the UFC fight in between Masvidal and I don't know who, and the same night that Canelo was fighting uh, Ray Drain Kovalev, and I mean,
That
I
was a
don't even.
different situation, official. That was about introducing Masvidal to boxing audiences in preparation for a fight down the line. So that's the
Very
reason why.
possible.
That's the reason why they allowed or delayed the boxing fight with Kovalev to allow the UFC fight to be shown in its entirety. But it was a fight that I think Canelo was tremendously against, and one of the reasons for his lawsuit with Oscar De La Hoya and DAZN, because I don't think he wanted a cross sports sort of so-called super fight.
Could be, and but what do you think about TMT's statement? I mean, I know that you and me we discussed on and offline about this topic about the zone, but to me it's still very confusing. So, what would you say, at least at this point? I know the subject is very complicated, but would you agree with TMT that the zone is on its last legs? The zone boxing.
Does they've clearly got no understanding of DAZN as a corporate entity and its company structure with Access Industries and 17 other companies, including oil companies, media companies, television, chemical companies. It's a massive diversified portfolio. It's a very
Oh,
long-term strategy which they're involved in, and I spoke about that when DAZN first entered the market. They were looking at an 8 to 10 year model. Hence, some of the deals which they negotiated in Japan to take like the J League away from national television onto DAZN. So some huge contracts, and there's been a lot of financial restructuring. There's no doubt about that, and their current debt levels, in which are financed by not only by borrowing, but it's by revenue. Which I've looked at the whole model. They've actually redistributed revenue from some of their other companies, so they can maintain interest on the debt at short-term levels. That's not a problem for them. They've got the money and the infrastructure, but it's the decision making and some of the contracts which they've been procuring to try and attract subscribers, which has been catastrophic, and that's why we've seen a number of changes at the top end. The guys they brought in place from ESPN to run the ship to try and sort of emulate the success they had have not worked. It's a very difficult market, official, to penetrate, and we spoke about that. It's, first of all, you've got a name that people cannot even pronounce or cannot even recognize. Is it DAZN? Is it DAZN? So that doesn't help matters. Secondly, it's an application. So when you're trying to compete with networks, television networks that people have grown up for a number of years and become accustomed, it's almost second nature, like ESPN, and those those networks have a major advantage in which they have America's biggest sports, and boxing is a niche sport shown on certain dates, so they can transfer subscribers or television viewers from their major sports onto boxing. It's a trickle down effect they have within those networks. Very difficult when it's a standalone application that tries to buy certain packages of basketball or baseball, but people are not going to migrate from ESPN onto DAZN. So for me, it was almost an impossible market to enter. I would have gone to DAZN, and I talked about this straight away. I would have gone to DAZN UK as one of their first boxing markets, given the potential and the number of pay-per-view subscribers as a ratio of the population there. So, and the rabid sort of boxing support that fans have over there, and the loyalty that they tend to show fighters throughout their careers, irrespective of wins and losses. They just, if they have an affinity with a fighter, they will follow you. You know, they will probably pay for Dave Allen on pay-per-view, given this guy's
Yeah.
record. So it's the whole culture is very different from the US. There, it's a very cynical boxing market. I found the boxing public they just have no tolerance or patience with certain fighting styles. They want to see wars. They start booing fighters. So it's a crazy market to penetrate. And Eddie Hearn didn't do a good job in trying to introduce himself to the US market by talking about taking over and making references to slavery, etc. So we know the way boxing markets are over there. The United States is psychotically racist and robotic, and it was never going to work for me. A very, very tall order, and making boasts about the sort of fighters that he was going to procure straight away, how we've got all of the money, and revealing your budget, which is a catastrophic error to do when you're trying to negotiate with fighters. So fighters were turning him down left, right, and center. So a horrible model. And we know Eddie Hearn is not a boxing fan. He's got no understanding on boxing. He's come up from golf. His father is a lot more of a boxing man who knows the politics and knows how to deal with the so-called boxing elite. But Eddie Hearn, reckless abandonment, been brought up with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he's failed miserably. And I can't see that market improving. Hence the reason why they actually had to reach out to Golden Boy to bring their fighters. So DAZN, which may have started off as an exclusive for Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing USA, is now an open network to any promoter. So they clearly brought in Golden Boy to do the heavy lifting, and for Eddie just to be bringing over his fighters. You know, you had all of his UK fighters fighting on DAZN and not fighting on Sky Sports, so it kind of depressed Sky Sports in the UK. So you cannot have a promoter trying to deal with two different entities on two separate in two different jurisdictions, competing against one another as well. So Eddie has to pursue one or the other. But so no, I don't think they're doomed, official, in the short term. But the business model is severely leveraged, financially leveraged, and their revenue streams are bigger in overseas markets. It's a lot bigger in Asia than it is in Europe. It does well in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, them sort of countries. I'm not sure about Italy, but
Okay, yeah.
subscription prices as well. So I'll come back with a more sort of deeper analysis once I've had a look at some more recent financials. But no, I don't think they're financially doomed in the short term. No.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. By the way, yeah. Speaking of the zone, so we have our beautiful thumbnail, and there's the zone logo and I mean, all the boxing weight classes and junior flyweight being marked. So I do think you wanted to speak a bit between yeah, go on.
I'll cover junior flyweights and super flyweights another day. I've got a because there's some fights forthcoming this week on that as well. So I'll maybe hold patience for that until Sunday. I've got a little bit more information I'm waiting upon, but yeah, I spoke about it a little bit during my sort of breakdown, but it's becoming a bit of a, for me, what was had the potential of being clearly the best weight division in from the 17, now 18, given the Bridgerweight
Yeah.
weight categories. It's becoming frustration now, official. As you know, I'm looking at these upcoming fights with Elvin Soto and Ken Shiro and Hisada, and you know my dosage of penicillin is gone from 10 milligrams to 500 per day now. So I'm getting a little bit pissed off, but I'll cover that in due course. There are some very talented young fighters in the weight category, but we'll I'll hold fire for another day on that one, because we're only fight one fight into the DAZN card. Um, all right, what else did we have on this card? I think one of the biggest shocks for me was heavyweight division with former three-time world amateur champion Majidov from Azerbaijan, who still very early in his professional career, could have been his fourth fight, I believe, up against
I think so.
Fedosov, who's been out for 3 years, and his last fight was a majority decision win against Joey DeWaco. And this almost gave me a heart attack. A 1-2, Majidov came out really good fighter. If you've seen him, tends to break down his opponents. Very good ring general. Has that ability to work sort of either side, and the way he can break down and work around the guard is really impressive. And the signs weren't looking good for Fedosov. You can imagine being three years out of the ring, but he always had power. He's got very good knockout ratio, even though the opposition wasn't the best. I think he had like 27 fights, so excuse me, significantly more experienced in the professional ranks than Majidov. But Majidov peppering him with a nice sort of stiff ramrod jab. Just got caught out of the blue with a 1-2 jab, straight right hand, and you could hear the impact on Majidov. It was a tremendous shot, and couldn't stay on his feet. And the way he fell, official, 200 and whatever, what he is, a 240-pound guy, almost reminded me of the way Clifford Etienne fell when Mike Tyson leveled him in the first round. All of his weight gone back onto the lower part of his leg, tibia, fibia, his ankle area, and couldn't tell straight away, but you could tell that he was in a tremendous amount of pain. And how he even got up with a protruding sort of bone fragments coming out of it, from his ankle area, how he even got up. But there was no way he was going to be able to continue the fight, and I don't think it was due to debilitating damage to his chin, but he was definitely stunned. But nah, with an injury of that sort of severity, Fedosov, what was he, 25-1 underdog, pulls off. That was a huge shocker. Shot. I think it destroyed a hell of a lot of accumulators, a lot of parlays.
Oh man,
Yeah,
it was a sure thing. Oh.
yeah, man. Fedosov, he did a coup d'état on the chairman of the board as well.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow, I knew the danger signs were there, official, but I didn't see that coming in the first round.
You mean you saw that Majidov's opponent hasn't been defeated for 8 years? And, three out of those 8 years, he wasn't even boxing.
Yeah, for a fighter. But if you're gonna catch somebody cold, it's gonna be the first round. But yeah, no,
Right.
that
And you
yeah,
know what? I haven't been watching Majidov, but our friends Shep, Duck, and
yeah,
all of them, as we are discussing a lot on various Discord pages, and I've been hearing them repeatedly talking about various Asian and Eastern European talents, amateurs, and they were very high. I mean, I don't remember if everybody was high on Majidov, but I remember seeing a lot of comments about him being a very good boxer. And keep in mind, I was never watching him, but I also saw them saying a few times that he kind of has a bad chin, and I mean, it's first of all, it's not surprising in the heavyweight division. Of course, you have to be more careful, but yeah, maybe the signs were already there that he had not so reliable chin. But I'm
yeah.
kind of talking out of my ass because I haven't been following the guy, but I'm just telling you what I heard about him.
Yeah, there was times and as an amateur that he got tagged a few times, and we don't really know a little bit too much because he's from Dagestan, Russia, but moved across to Azerbaijan and representing them. He's not a big heavyweight, nor does he have serious power. He's kind of a nutritional boxer, a breakdown, good good fundamentals, good conditioning. And Feathersoft, he's not a big heavyweight. I think he's only around 6'1", but good low center of gravity. And to me, there wasn't any sort of real zip on the punch that Majidov couldn't have seen. His guard does tend to obscure his eyesight, so maybe he didn't see the 1-2. Maybe he thought it was just Fedosov wouldn't open up his arsenal a little bit too much in the first round, and given his ring rust as well, maybe he's going to try and. Maybe there was a little bit of underestimating how dangerous Fedosov would be straight away, but it's just a routine, straightforward 1-2 straight down the pipe.
Yeah.
Just caught him cold. Caught him cold, and unfortunately, he just fell in the worst way possible. All of his weight snapping his ankle.
Yeah,
Horrible,
well,
horrible injury.
oh yeah, indeed. I didn't like seeing it on the replay, man. That's fucked up. But getting caught cold would be a good topic on its own maybe for some other time. But maybe we should talk about, the small things that the veteran trainers should know and have experience with. I would say a lot of fighters are going in the ring cold and not sufficiently worked up, and
Yeah.
because I remember back in the day, Mike Tyson, yeah, he was a heavyweight too, and indeed he had a granite chain, in my opinion. But he never entered the ring cold. That's why he was. I mean, he was very explosive on the pads just minutes before his ring walk, working that sweat up, and yeah, people should be aware about those small things. They are not very visible to the eyes of the viewers, of the boxing fans, because they are not necessarily happening in front of their eyes, but are really important. So yeah, but yeah, go on.
Because I mean, with those early undercard fights, the zone doesn't tend to have any extended coverage of the fighters preparing in their dressing room, so we couldn't. I don't recall seeing any shots of Majidov warming up, etc. Putting on a sweat, doing some light pad work with his trainer. So difficult to gauge whether it was just a mistake. Maybe we underestimated Fedosov's activity in the first round, or chin issues, or whether he was dropped in sparring heavily before. I don't even recall his sort of ring work, whether there was a sweat on his body. So very hard to say. But yeah, Eddie had a lot of hopes, and Majidov was looking, he was looking for AJ in the professional. He would have never have got that fight. He'd beat AJ in the amateurs, but AJ and Majidov, they're at light years apart in terms of Majidov even trying to, even going to procure the fight. We're already seeing Alexander Rusek, who's being frozen out of, his title shot for 2 years. So Majidov, yeah, he's gonna he's gonna be the same age as Luis Ortiz before he gets a title shot.
Definitely. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, we'll move on for that one. Also on the card, we had another fighter who Eddie Hearn has abandoned in Ali Akhmedov, who lost his WIBO super middleweight belt to Carlos Gongoro of Ecuador. And the way Eddie and Gongoro has now become, best friends, that's Eddie's way of climbing over the corpses of fighters who he has no time for anymore after, just a loss. But Gongora was up in the ring again, defending his IBO belt, I think, for the first time, up against the American Christopher Pearson, who was moving up from I think it might have even been super welterweight official, 154. I think he was jumping up 2 weights. Pearson having suffered 2 defeats at 100. I don't know. I think it might have been at 154. No doubt, we know what the fighters are going to be saying, that he was just cutting a little bit too much weight, trying to make 154. So an opportunity now at 168, being his natural weight, being fully fit, not having to cut significant pounds to make the weigh in. Excuse me. Talking up the normal rubbish that we see at the pre-fight conferences, but he was just undersized, overmatched, had no power. The funniest thing about this fight was both Pearson and one of his supporters. It could have been his excuse me, I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was his girlfriend, his wife, his sister, his mum, or his auntie, whatever, fighting with the referee, All I could hear her saying was, "Don't worry about it, the referee doesn't know what he's doing." And Pearson fighting with the Pearson fighting with the referee as well, talking about Gongora coming in with his head as a weapon. Something Liam Williams should have been doing a hell of a lot more fighting with his Rosario Jr., but Pearson and the referee was coming into it. But one thing I liked about Gongora was some of his feints official. Very, very sound fundamentally, but it was his feints before he started throwing the punches that were drawing the lead, and then he was coming back with beautiful hard jabs. Not the little pause. He would even change up when he initiated the feints before his jab, sometimes feinting before his body work, which Pearson just had no idea on reading. Went into his shell pretty early in the fight. This was just a one-sided beatdown, but Pearson took the punches quite well. He was getting leveled with some jabs and hard body shots. Very composed fighter, Gongora. Nice combinations, nice body work as well. Just a mean, patient stalker. Got a good chin as well. We know can recover the way he recovered with Ali Akhmedov from some early knockdowns. Fantastic uppercuts. Has pretty much everything. Maybe not an injection in pace, or maybe there's not a fighter that has brought it out of him so far. Maybe not the fastest feet, but Pearson didn't try and exploit any of that. Didn't try and force Gongora to turn to try and take advantage of maybe if he's got cumbersome feet. But Gongora just had the size. You can just see that he could afford that range, but he was more than happy to try and trap Pearson up against the ropes and just beat down on the little guy. And Pearson sustained some eye damage, and the way he checked out of the fight, crying about his eye, that was some weak ass shit as well, But if it's a genuine eye injury, I'm not gonna complain. But there was no way he was gonna win that fight, so I've got no problem with him quitting the bout, so to speak. So Gongora moves on, IBO champion. So look forward to watching him later on. Official, I know you was into this fight big time. Give us your thoughts.
Oh yeah. Carlitos Way Gongora. His nickname is actually Carlitos Way. Nice. Yeah. Man, I like that motherfucker a lot because, seeing him in his previous fight was the first time I actually saw him fighting. And man, he in that fight, before going into the Pearson fight, he was looking so fucking cold-blooded. Like he was taking the pressure from Ali Akhmedov, and he was the way he was laughing and grinning in the ring. I would say like he was looking as if his main goal there is not to be a professional fighter in the ring, but to troll Akhmedov. And I don't know, it just stuck with me. Not very important, but it tells me that this guy has huge balls, some huge balls, man. And it definitely reflected in the way the way he was fighting, because he withstood the pressure from Akhmedov. Akhmedov, who was very very generic and predictable with his punches, with his 1-2s and the left hook, always throwing them at the same speed, same power, full power. And by the way, that's why he gassed, and that's how he got knocked out, probably because he was putting all the mustard on his punches, on every single of his punches in that
Great
fight.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was extremely robotic. There was not a lot. Well, certainly lacked experience. Young Akhmedov,
So he needs to develop his ring IQ. And Gongora, well, he looks like a guy who's a ring smart guy. He seems like a guy who loves to spar and learned his boxing by sparring. I mean, I don't know. I'm not aware of his backstory, but he just seems that way to me, like those gym warriors. And I would say that's why he's so cold-blooded, just learn his shit in the gym wars, sparring, and then, well, now he's, like the commentators are saying, training in Boston against much better competition, because up till now he was only sparring his own brother, because he didn't have any real sparring partners in the Ecuador. Now he's based in Boston. Go on, you want to add something to it?
His brother must have a chin.
Indeed. And something that also showed in this fight, as well as against Ali Akhmedov, was his sharpness with his uppercut on the inside, short punches on the inside, some good counter punching. And like you said, he can fight on the long range. Very good fighter on the long range, but also good as well, extremely good on the inside. And he showcased it against Pearson the other night. After the first 6 rounds, fighting in the first gear, Pearson was not willing to open up against him, because he was definitely feeling Gongora's punches. He was shelling up, not giving enough of resistance, and then around the 7th round, Gorgola said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna take him out," and that's what he did just a round or two later. And yeah, some nice inside skills, good long range fighting as well. Like you mentioned, I would say possibly. I mean, I was not analyzing closely. Excuse me, please. I was not closely analyzing his fights, but that's definitely something that I'm gonna do very soon. Is that maybe some volume at mid range may trouble him. Some hand speed, a lot of volume at mid range may possibly be the key against him. But overall, not a fantastic opponent in front of him, but very, very, very good performance. And big shout out to Carlitos V. Gongora. And it looks like all that hard work on Precise's farm in Ecuador is paying off now.
Yeah, man. Precise got him bench lifting all his wild pigs, man. Let's build up that upper body strength of his.
That's Precise a better conditioning coach that Heredia and Alex Ariza together. He got him on that carnivore diet.
Yeah, man. But all in all, official, that was a terrible undercard.
Yeah,
Gongora could have done with a natural super middleweight fighter. Well, what's this? Christopher Pearson going up 2 weights? That was nonsense. Not a competitive fight. It never was going to be a competitive fight. Maybe they had some difficulty in procuring fighters for a card in Florida. Not sure what's happening with the vaccinations and the second waves in the States. What's flights and quarantine procedures? Not a good time for fighters to be moving around, but they could have done better than that. Plenty of US-based fighters who could have traveled from state to state and fought, and Gongora against even Chris Eubank Jr. would have been a better fight. But next for him, you know, why not? Why not Berlanga? Get Rabango in the ring with Gongora. Let's see if he can maintain that streak. I think Berlanga is going down personally.
Oh, that will be, yeah. Gongora may break a lot of hearts. Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
That
If you,
that would be cool to see.
if you just look at Berlanga's next opponent, and this is a man who claims he should be on the pound for pound top 10 list because he's been wiping out complete nobodies for 15 rounds as some sort of a gimme exercise for Top Rank, just to
Hold on, corruption. Sorry, you're trying to tell me that Berlanga said he deserves to be on a pound for pound top 10 list.
But Berlanga
Oh.
himself said he should be on the pound for pound list.
Fuck. Incredible. I'm so shocked. Can't believe that. He's insane. Yeah, but by the way, corruption, that new boxing game that's coming out soon and that has a lot of fighters. They included Berlanga also.
Oh my
And
God.
you know that there are, some of the fighters being in the video game. They also created short promotional videos to promote the game, and Berlanga straight up with his video, he was straight up asking them to put all the best notes. I don't have the right word. I don't know how. All the best ratings in the game. He wants them.
That's the problem. He's being gassed up, getting revenue from different platforms now in games and a little bit of sponsorship, whatever. No doubt Top Rank are putting a lot of money into him. Has a very good trainer as well, so there's certainly avenues to improve his skill whatsoever. He's got the television network and he's getting people excited with this run and this whole gimmick, like the Undertaker WrestleMania undefeated sort of streak. That's sort of always good on the undercard as a little bit of side sort of entertainment. But come on, man, give him some proper fights. I mean, this is doing nothing to his career except boosting his ego and putting a bit of some extra change in his pockets, which I'm sure he's happy with. But for him to come up with some sort of ridiculous statements on inflating his own ego massively to that sort of extent, that's what's wrong with boxing at the moment. Fighters who have no understanding of rankings and the history of boxing and what pound for pound represents. 15 straight knockouts, and that makes you a pound for pound top 10 fighter. This guy clearly has no brain cells.
Yeah, those 15 straight knockouts put you right about Deontay Wilder. And but you know what's crazy, corruption? I was thinking after becoming a serious hardcore boxing viewer, boxing fan, I was thinking that all the fighters that those who are acting that way, that they clearly know that this is just for their own promotion. I was thinking that no, they don't really believe their hype. They're just acting crazy in order to promote themselves. But man, in fact, they do think that, man. Many of them really do believe their own hype.
Yeah, and even with Errol Spence, when he had defeated a damaged and Kell Brook, having to cut a significant amount of weight from 160 to back down to 147 pounds. Errol Spence was in the same category, talking about how he should be a pound for pound fighter after a single win. And I think he was actually put on, could have been the ESPN rankings straight away. So I don't know. Hence the reason why the coup d'etat boxing, we have our own ranking system, because quite frankly, a lot of these commercial ranking systems are all correlated within the fortunes of a fighter. So it's a lot of the fighters who enter these or in discussion, we know that there's so much financial transactional exchange between the promoters and commercial publications, and a lot of backhand deals done. It's just a cesspit of corruption. So I pay no attention whatsoever to the Ring magazine or the ESPN, etc. There's no logic, no understanding. Even with the Ring magazine, they simply don't understand the history of what pound for pound represents. So it's the focal argument for this so-called new generation, and certainly boxing fans in America who always cite pound for pound rankings as a starting point for their arguments. Yeah, they start telling me that Julius Indongo is a tremendous unified champion. He should be a pound for pound fighter as well. So.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, just like Yelusinov, who did as good of a job. I mean, yeah, that just tells you how overrated that Crawford victory over Indongo is, when Prograis, a much smaller fighter, and Yelusinov as well, did the same thing in 2 or 3 rounds with Indongo, with the same guy. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for a while that it's pretty much clear that the mainstream pound for pound lists are nothing but the promotional tool. And as you were speaking of the Ring magazine and the other publications, I mean, just look at the last year, because there was it was 2020, well, the time to choose the fighter of the decade, and Ring's own what is he, director, or I'm not sure, Dougie Fisher, he refused to participate as a board member when they were picking the fighters of the year, of the decade, everything of the decade, because the crazy motherfuckers didn't even include Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. That's how bad it is, because their own main guy refused to be on the panel to discuss it with them, to participate in it, because fuckers didn't even want to include Chocolatito. It's crazy.
Yeah. See, the Ring magazine's credibility and impartiality had all eradicated when the company no longer was based in Philadelphia, and they were sold and bought by Golden Boy Promotions and moved to Los Angeles. So there's a clear conflict of interest between being a publication that is owned by a promotional company. So no doubt they're going to use the magazine to promote and showcase their fighters and dominate even the list with their fighters. And we see that we saw that in the past with Saul Alvarez and a number of other Golden Boy fighters. So there's no credibility when you have a conflict of interest. Then
Yeah, definitely. Just a few examples. So yeah, we are talking about the Ring magazine. They're going to have Canelo as their number one pound for pound. ESPN definitely would have Terence Crawford. Showtime. I don't even want to know who they would have. Either Errol Spence, Charlo, maybe even they surely had Wilder there back in the day. So it just tells you, it just describes you the landscape of a few powerful names, TV networks or promoters, everybody trying to to position their own fighters
yeah,
as foot pound talent.
when you have Errol Spence on the rankings higher than an Alexander Usyk, then there's no logic to the whole ranking system. I can understand Naoya Inoue being ranked very highly and justifiably so, whether he's number one, two, or three. I've not even perused the current updated rankings, etc. But from my understanding of listening to other shows, etc., I think he's within the top three. He could even be number one on one of them. So fine, there's some of them you can't argue with. That's fine. But overall, yeah, for Roman Gonzalez, not as far as I'm concerned, he's number one in the sport. He's the best fighter in the sport without any shadow. Even Roman Gonzalez in what after 50, 52, 53 fights, his skill set is above anybody in the sport, and what he's doing in 2021 in fighting bigger champions for unified belts and beating them clearly, which he did, and being cruelly denied by just blatant corruption and pre-populated scorecards and the protection racket that I will talk about another day as well, that has been in for Juan Estrada for not only this fight, but it's been something that goes back. But I'll talk about that another show. It is just catastrophic. It's disgusting, and I'm just so badly disillusioned with mainstream boxing and those who and the social engineering that has gone on for a number of years, and the fickle-minded general boxing public who are so easily manipulated by it. We know that boxing fans in the United States are probably some of the dumbest people on the planet, without any doubt. You just have to interact with them on a daily basis, and you know that it's just
Yeah.
words just cannot even summarize. It's painful to even interact with them. Their lack of ability to structure any common argument, but it's more the lack of honesty. They simply won't accept the truth. They'll resort to race baiting and racial abuse and the normal defensive characteristics we know when somebody just clearly has no ability to lodge any arguments or even argue the point. It's the YTBC is just hence the reason why officially is not even interacting on Twitter anymore. It's just one of those.
Well, yeah, I'm doing it as least as possible. I mean, I'm there to promote our own channel and stay in the contact about with a couple of interesting people from the boxing world and the other YouTubers. There's a few of them that are doing a good job. So yeah, nice to be in contact with those guys. But yeah, social medias are a cancer anyways, for the most part.
All right. Enough of the coup d'etat rant. Let's get on to some more fight reviews. PBC card also took place on the early hours of Sunday morning for us in Central European time. Don't recall the undercard at all. I was only interested in the main event, and it was the return of Tony Harrison after a significant layoff, losing his WBC championship in a rematch with Jamel Charlo. And Tony, unfortunately, regrettably for Tony, having suffered a major loss with the death of not only his father but his lead trainer, Ali Salam. Very difficult to recover, and Tony admittedly, suffered massively, and it was down to his brother LJ to actually get Tony into some sort of a positive mindset to continue boxing, and he took over the ranks, a very close family, and that's good to see. And Tony is always a fighter whose boxing skills I admire, greatly. A fantastic fighter. I've talked about it in the past. We know his deficiencies and we've spoken about them, but I don't really care. He's prepared to fight anybody, has great skills. So it was a good time for him to come back, but against a tricky opponent, Brian Perella, who was fighting at welterweight. Kind of a bizarre situation for him, a 6 feet, 147-pound fighter, good boxer, good technician, can be quite sort of elusive as well. And I think he was coming off a defeat against Abel Ramos. I think that was a fight in which I had actually waged on Perella to win the fight official, and he got knocked out in the last round. So yeah, another accumulator went up in smoke. So Perella moving up in weight. I think it was a good decision from his new trainer, Roy Jones Jr., to get him up to a weight more conducive to his size, where he's not having to cut off a lot of weight. Can be a little bit healthier, and I think it showed in this fight. And Tony Harrison, for me, official, could never really get going in the entire fight. Perella didn't really allow him to settle into the fight. Perella was just peppering him with jabs and combinations, sticking and moving. Tony Harrison couldn't really find a home for his jab, was really started flicking the jab after he got hurt in the early part of the fight. Harrison, who is much better as a counterpuncher, I don't know what the hell he was doing, and just following Perella around the ring, trying to get Perella's back up against the ropes and then try and open up with his punches. Clearly the better technician, better jab, had the better punches, but Harrison had his left hook, which is an excellent punch, in which he was landing it against Jamel consistently, was out. Don't know what the hell happened to that left hook. I think with Harrison official, it looked like he was just carrying the remnants of being knocked out against Jamel Charlo a little bit too much. He was covering up on the exchanges, something he wasn't doing with Jamel.
Exactly.
Coming up with a high guard. It almost looked like he was afraid of being tagged with something heavy, so he wasn't looking to slip, come to the side, come back with that left hook, which for me was just very frustrating. And I don't think his brother did a good enough job in trying to give Tony any sort of decent instructions on how to make those adjustments, how to slip Pereira's jab, especially the double, triple jab what Pereira was doing, and then stepping off to the left, coming out. Tony didn't do a good job in trapping Pereira up against the ropes either, so his cutting off the ring was not good enough. His jab was not good enough, and if his jab is not good enough for a straight puncher to come back with his straight right hand, he was only almost speculating with that. When Pereira would try and walk Tony down, that's when we saw, I think, the best of Tony. We saw him using his good footwork, and he can go to a shoulder roll, so he can block the jab and come back with just single straight counter right hands, even counter with the jab. And he was picking Pereira off during those moments in which he was the counter puncher, but when he was the lead puncher and when he was trying to walk Pereira down, he was just getting peppered, head and body. And for me, Pereira won the fight 7 rounds to 5. 6-6. That's a bit of a stretch for me. I think we know the 154 pound division. I think they're looking at Harrison, Julian Williams, Jason Rosario as a little round robin in preparation for another shot at maybe Jamel Charlo 4. So there's more upside with Tony Harrison. And yeah, you can talk about the racial bias as well with the PBC and that sort of side in Tony Harrison. But yeah, Tony coming off a long layoff, the mental demons were still there for me. I think he's cutting. Well, he was cutting a lot of weight in the past. 6 foot 1 inch guy at 30 years old now. I would have, if I was his brother, I would have taken him up to middleweight straight away, official after it. A defeat, a new weight category. Jamel's got all 3 belts. We don't know what's happening after if the fight with Castaño is made, whether Jamel is still going to stay around or whether the belts get fractured off. I can't see Tony getting a shot at Jamel in the near future. So the middleweight division is crying out for new blood. I think it would have been better for Tony. I think he'll be a lot healthier at 160 pounds. He's talked about having to cut. I think for the second Jamel fight, he had to cut 6 pounds on the day of the weigh-in. So he's clearly struggling to make 154 pounds. So that's just too much weight cutting. Although he fought very well at close range with Jamel, was actually beating Jamel up. So the talent is clearly there, but I don't know, official. I think a combination of bereavement, ring rust. He obviously has concerns about his chin, and there's no doubt about that. And he was hurt very early on in the fight, and I think that's what made him reticent to open up. He clearly didn't throw enough punches, and he tends to compensate work rate with accuracy, but the accuracy was not there as well, certainly with his jab. So, and the jab is his foundation to start all of his work, and there was no body work, there was no combination punching. His left hook had disappeared. 7 rounds to fight. I've got to be honest, I think Pereira should have got the decision.
Yeah, it kind of looked that way, man. I mean, in the late rounds, Tony Harrison was winning the rounds. As the fight went on, he looked better than at the beginning. But yeah, I was expecting much more from him, and
Man, I like him so much for the same reasons that you gave us, and I do think he's a fantastic boxer. He can watch him just in his two fights against the smaller Charlo. I mean, he showed that he could box at long range, mid range, and on the inside. Uh, I, I I don't understand. Maybe I'll have to rewatch the fight, the first one against Charlo, but to me it was not a close fight. I gave, from what I remember, I think I gave Charlo 3 rounds. I thought that Tony Harrison was fantastic in both fights. On the second fight, he was fighting more on the inside, and which was the complete opposite of the way he was fighting here. I mean, yeah, he was not. It's not a problem that he was not fighting Perella on the inside, but when he was there at close quarters, he was kind of like you maybe suggested earlier, probably gun shy. Um, and another thing that you told me uh, the last on the night of the fight that you probably forgot to mention, he doesn't like to fight southpaws, and
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and he self-admittedly said that he doesn't like to fight the southpaws, so it may be a problem as well. But I was just confused because he was not really opening up at mid and close range. Um, Now, yeah, even against Charlo and the other fighters, every time he would get hit, he looks like he loses his balance. Like, yeah, we know about that his chin is not the best in the game, and but also when he gets hit, you see him. He's a tall, lanky guy, and he kind of looks like many times he doesn't even get hurt, but he seems to lose his balance after getting hit, or maybe I don't know. Maybe indeed it was him getting hurt. But the thing with Perella was not running, but was moving. He was switching the distance all the time during the exchanges and using the lateral movement and getting him off balance. Now, I do agree with you totally that he's much better when counterpunching, but even when he was stacking Pernella, for example, yeah, when he was pressuring Perella, he would throw jabs, trap him on the ropes, and when Perella would open up, those were the moments where he would land great straight right hand as a counter. Poke him with jab, have him on the ropes, and the moment Perella would open up, he was landing that straight right as a counter on Perella's forehead, and it's a really nice punch. And like you told me
Yeah.
yourself, he was probably expecting to stop Perella with that punch, but yeah, on the inside he was short and mid range. That's my problem with him in this fight. Perella was the one who was active, who was letting his hands go, and plus combining his combo punching with his footwork, lateral movement, and even stepping out from a mid to long range, doing small things that were, making it hard for Harrison to stack him while to hit him while Harrison was stacking him. And like you said again, him stacking fighters is not really the best thing. So I don't know, man. I mean,
Officially,
yeah,
if you sort of really micro-analyze it, Perella was slapping a lot with a lot of his punches, and so I'm not really going to get down to dissecting the fight, and as I normally do, in deducting from from punches that are not delivered with the knuckle part of the fist. So reassessing the fight on that sense. But Perella is a back foot pot shotter, but he tends to slap with a lot of his punches. I think Harrison, what he was looking really for a war, somebody who'd stand and trade with him. Perella did oblige, but once he landed from a lead position, then he would get the fuck out of there and start running around the ring. So stylistically, I don't know what the fuck Al Heyman was doing. It's not the sort of fighter you want to bring in with Harrison's coming back off a layoff and you're trying to rebuild him. Either you deal with a pressure fighter who's going to stand there and trade and allow Tony to counter. Because the key is you want to rebuild his confidence. If you want,
Exactly.
Tony's talked about that he's looking for a fight with Julian Williams next, which would be a great fight. Jason Rosario, that sort of league of fighters that this sort of round robin that they've had with Jamel Charlo. So, and you can have him on a 154 undercard, as Al Heyman has done in the past on the PBC. So you can have 3 or 4 great 154 fights. Jamel headlining the card. Tony and Julian Williams co-main event, and then Erickson Lubin against Rosario. So you know what I mean? You could stack them up very nicely. Throw in a Brian Castano as well if he's lost his title. Erizlandi Lara as well. So you can have a fantastic card of just 154 pound fight. I would have no problem with that. So
Not at all, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But
go on.
but I would just like to stress it. One last point. For sure. Pernella, part shotter, etc. move around, and indeed he does slap his punches. But even when Harrison had him on the ropes in front of him, Perella was the one letting his hands go, and Harrison would be in the range, stay in the range, but not throw punches. And it seemed to me like as if he was kind of gun shy, and that's why I do agree with you. I'm wondering if it was about him being reminded, still having the Charlo rematch in his head, or because of being clipped early with some good punches. So, but yeah, that's my problem. He was looking kind of gun shy at close quarters, and
What he tends to do in that is that he'll, as with Jamel, Jamel do that double jab right hand, Tony a block, and then from the right hand delivered by Charlo, he takes a step and he comes back with that left hook, and it's a beautiful left hook to the body. But he simply wasn't doing that. I felt the opportunity was there with Perella, but with a southpaw who's looking to move to Tony's right to get away from the straight right hand after Tony, but if Tony wasn't even landing that jab, or he wasn't coming back with the left hook as from the lead position after blocking the 1-2 from Perella, but Perella, what he would do, he'd go down to the body, so he'd start hooking, he'd do the left hook, right hook to the body, and then he would get out of there. So he had that sort of, it was arm punching essentially. It was just, and with an arm puncher, you can land faster combinations, as you see with Miguel Berchelt against Oscar Valdez. He's a renowned combination puncher because he's an arm puncher. He's got that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just got to look at the way his punches are delivered. And Oscar Valdez was landing single hard punches in between his Berchelt's faster, more frequent arm punches, and that's what Harrison should have been doing, because I think he's got the much heavier hands. He's the more experienced 154-pound fighter, and he had the 4-inch reach advantage official, so he really should have been landing his jab from the outside, but couldn't, and he was just confined in the end just to flicking at that jab, trying to flick his jab over, or even trying to draw the lead from Brian. But Brian didn't oblige, so smart. So they're probably going to rematch this. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but a draw, maybe Roy Jones will campaign for a rematch. I'm not sure, but all in all, it was a disappointing return for Tony Harrison. Not unexpected, but disappointing. Anything else on the PBC card, official, that you saw you want to talk about?
No, in fact, it was the only one fight I saw from that card.
Yeah. What else did we have? The only thing else we had on was the pay-per-view on the Triller card, which was, I kind of saw little bits. I didn't see too much. I was interested in betting on the main event, as you know, and that was a predictable fight. But the one fight that surprised me was the return of Steve Cunningham and Frank Mir. The only thing I can say about that fight is that brother Nassim would have been looking down and bitterly disappointed in that Frank Mir still had vision in both eyes.
Yeah.
What the hell was that motherfucker doing on that card? You know, if you're gonna scrape the barrel and bring the lowest of scum, you know, having destroyed the vision of one fighter and, you know, severely visually impaired. I think one of the fighters is blind in one eye and somebody else is severely visually impaired, you know, after resorting to some of the dirtiest tactics. That was a load of bollocks. But the one fighter I think we were both looking forward to was Regis Prograis, a fighter who, very talented, very skillful fighter, and the fighter who is fought around the world, and, you know, somebody who you can admire, has that sort of gumption to get in the ring and fight anybody. Very heavy-handed, good skills, great balance, footwork, complete. You know, has the total package as a fighter, and but a disappointing matchup with, you know, Ivan Redkach. When that fight was made, I was like, what the fuck? But it's all about the payday for these fighters. So, you know, fine. I'm not gonna criticize a young fighter who's trying to maximize his revenue, you know, for the future. You know, Regis, you know, having to move from Louisiana to, he went on to the West Coast and then back to Texas, and, you know, he's lost his house and everything in the past. So I'm not gonna criticize him too heavily for having taken the, you know, an interim big payday, probably may even been the biggest payday of his life against Ivan Redkach. And I didn't really see the fight until really the embarrassment of what transpired at the end. So I don't know if you want to give your thoughts, official. I didn't really see the early rounds in this one.
I was not paying too much attention because I was still being shocked from what I was witnessing during the previous fight in between Cunningham and the mirror. I would like to talk about that first. So yeah, Oscar De La Hoya. So, man, he was fucking drunk, fucking high. I mean, it was incredible. The amount of nonsense he was talking, the way he was screaming, man, at the beginning I was laughing my ass off, laughing at Oscar for being high, being drunk or whatever. But then I realized when it continued, because it never stopped, I was like, I came to the point where I was starting to really worry for Oscar. But then I went back to laughing at him because man, it was incredible to hear him talk nonsense, talk bollocks nonstop. And
Yeah, Oscar.
anyways, yeah,
Oscar
we're
trying to do his best impersonation of Clarence Bodyguard from RoboCop with the amount
oh
of
I
power that he had. You know, as officially, I mean, as an overall spectacle, I mean, you had 60-year-old rappers performing, you had showgirls dancing and singing in between. It was a moral hazard.
oh yeah, complete degeneracy, man. And fuck that shit. I would never watch a Thriller card again. And by the way, I do think it the way their shows are looking may be a good thing for Teofimo's future to be there because he's that kind of of a guy that who's very braggadocious, etc.
Yeah.
So he would. I do think his personality, character, him and his father would go well with that Thriller app represents. And from the standpoint of an actual event, I would actually say that they were doing a great job, meaning they know that. I mean, yeah, the fun and the thing, the singers or the actors they were promoting in between the fights was I was disgusted by them, but they understood that they need some extra show in between the fights, so that's a good blueprint on how to stage an event, a boxing event, if you want it to be big and to be interesting to the viewers. If the actual quality of if the quality of the actual fights cannot be achieved, at least that's the way to create an event. But man, yeah, it was a complete degeneracy. I cannot believe what I was witnessing, and I mean the commentators cursing out all the time, nonstop. Wow, I mean they had a Jake Paul whose public are teenagers, and at the same time they're promoting the complete degeneracy. I mean Snoop Dogg, that retard. Um,
I
the
mean, this guy
singers,
is a 60-year-old grandfather, official.
yeah, man, and talking about smoking blunts, while like Easy and his crew said back in the day, you're what was the punchline? You're 60 pounds old with your boots and your bed, something like that. Yeah, that's an accurate description of Snoop Dogg. I mean, that's a guy who who switches, who changes his religion every few years for money. I mean, what do you expect? And yeah, people were cursing out. They were blowing weed smoke in Albertine's face. He was so out. He
I
he
mean,
did
if
a
that was
whole
Bob Arum wouldn't mind, man, because
yeah.
he loves those cannabis gummy bears he eats. Yeah,
Yeah, and but Oscar while
yeah.
commentating on Cunningham versus Mir, I mean, I do believe that they probably gave him his drugs or something like that, and gave him a couple of lines, gave him the alcohol, and kind of made him go and make a fool of himself. And yeah, indeed, it was funny to me because I'm not going to lie to you. I like a certain amount of degeneracy. I do enjoy it. A low level of, it can be funny while at the same time being aware that I'm watching a complete degeneracy, and I can still find it funny. But man, it was sad at the same time because you're a guy who's ahead of Golden Boy, at least a guy who's promoting. It's your brand. I don't know who's the actual CEO of the company, but you're representing it, and it's a terrible thing to act that way. Yeah, go on. You want to say something?
Yeah, the reason why I think Snoop Dogg is affiliated with that, I think he's a financial backer and one of the partners with
I heard that.
Freeway Rick. Yeah, it would have been better if Snoop Dogg just goes back to doing his Uber Eats commercials, because he's got
Yeah.
no business, commentating on professional boxing. But yeah, that was an embarrassment. And another embarrassment was, why the fuck did Regis Prograis accept that? Did you see that abomination of a belt that they gave him?
No, what was that?
The Triller belt. He
Oh yeah,
he
yeah.
won.
I told you about it. Yeah.
My God, man! What was that, made by Snoop Dogg's daughter or something? That was what the hell was that?
It was so fucking cringy when I saw him with that belt. First, I thought when they were talking about him receiving a belt, I was thinking, okay, maybe it's some kind of regular, or I don't know which the fuck belt exists nowadays from WBC, etc. But it's a fucking cartoon belt, man. A fucking cartoon belt. It's
It
incredible.
probably came from the same tranche as memorabilia as that crown that Adonis Stevenson used to wear, like that, what he got from Burger King.
Yeah, bad. You just simply know corruption. That he was, man. He was. I almost guarantee you, he was feeling uncomfortable getting that belt. But yeah, Oscar, man, the shit he was saying. So Cunningham, being an ex-member of the U.S. Army, so he had something like USS FA or something like that, some kind of acronym on the back of his trunk. He was constantly talking about the USSR and USSA. Fuck, man. Then.
Such a pity that his ship didn't go down by Japanese torpedoes, so he would never have seen this motherfucker in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, Sina Musia in the chat room is saying Nassim is looking up, not down, insinuating he's in hell. Yeah, I mean, the amount of eyes lost in the ring that guy caused probably writes in. But the things that Oscar was saying, I cannot even recall of all the stupid things he was saying. He was screaming, "Inflate the balloon, inflate the balloon," and the way he was saying it, he was coked out of his mind, man. He was fucked up. He was so drunk. Constantly repeating, "Inflate the balloon, inflate the balloon." Then don't smother your mother will tell you. The way he was acting, man, so fucking embarrassing. But at the same time, I reminded myself it's the same guy who put on two guys who used to fight in the UFC half a century ago and put them in the ring. So I'm not gonna say like I'm gonna pity him too much, but yeah, at the same time, it's terrible, and I'm simply shocked, surprised that he's not aware that he's ahead of the Golden Boy brand, and it's you can understand Canelo not willing to be associated with him when you see him acting that way,
Yes.
like a complete
Yeah.
buffoon,
like a fool, and he's unaware of that. I mean, even if let's say Thriller paid him some money, well, because they have a huge budget. I know that Michael Buffer, first of all, is contracted strictly to exclusively to Matchroom. So either his Matchroom contract expired, or he got paid a lot of money, and Matchroom got paid a lot of money for his appearance. So
That
Oscar
is it.
Cohen, by the way,
Yeah.
and by the way, yeah, and also he's coming back. He's gonna have his own exhibition fights, and I don't understand if he's gonna actually have it on Thriller or on the Zone. See, it's complicated, but maybe a topic for another time. But even if you got paid to be there and commentate on a fight, in long term, that's a terrible decision to act that way, like a complete buffoon. Inflate the balloon, and the way he was complimenting, um, what's his name, Cunningham's physique, and then
But
camera
yes, Cunningham looked in tremendous shape. I was like, wow, man.
and the way he was
He definitely had some. He had that testosterone replacement therapy, no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. He was in better shape than when he fought Marco Huck. I was like, wow.
Oh well, you know what? So just a day ago, you asked me to go and rewatch the Andrade Williams fight. So we do the best possible breakdown of this fight, and I did it. But I barely did it. But then I went on to just listen again to the commentary of Cunningham versus Mir, which was a fucking shitty fight, but I was looking forward to do it just because of the fucking shit Oscar was saying. I enjoyed it so much. I'm telling you, that interview that is going to give many podcasts, BDA and the others. I would say even me myself, I'll do it for this show. I'll use a lot of sound bites from Oscar. Man, it's a gold mine of nonsense.
I'm sure they had Oscar for the main event as well, but he was becoming an embarrassment, so they pulled the plug on him at the end of the Cunningham bout.
Probably.
Yeah. You could hear Ray Flores and Oscar's really hyped. They were using all of these politically correct euphemisms. Just to show.
Yeah.
But official, we cannot get away about Ivan Redcatch and what the fuck happened to him. The way this guy went down like he'd been shot by some of my ISIS brothers with their sniper rifles. The way he went down with a punch that was not below the belt. It looked like Redcatch had deflected most of it with his forearm.
It didn't even hit him, even upstairs.
Yeah.
It didn't even land, even upstairs.
I mean, for a professional fighter to be extricating himself from a bout, feigning an injury as pathetic as that was caught beautifully on the replay. That should be. How the hell is a fighter going to get another fight on the back end of that? Know that he may not be he may not need to do so financially because he would have been compensated very well. But it was a fight that Regis Prograis was going to win. I just feel sorry for a lot of the people that had Regis by knockout in their parlays or accumulators. What did that go back on the technical decision on a scorecard? Yeah, disgusting. for Ivan Redcratch to be sort of embroiled on this complete shit show, to go down like that. That's a bad look for Regis Prograis, and for him to crown his victory with that belt as some sort of justification for the bout. He needs to separate him. He needs to extricate himself from Thriller. Get the fuck out of there. I don't know what the hell he's doing. Maybe it's just an interim cash grab, fine. But if he comes back on Thriller, then I'm not going to watch that again. So fuck that.
For sure.
And the main event was no better as well. But we knew it was going to be like that. And for me, it was one of the it was one of the easiest betting decisions I made. But the referee's performance, and we'll talk about that. But in terms of Ben Askren, he's 37 years old. He was retired. He had a 1-2 record, predominantly a wrestler, grappler. This was his biggest payday. So no doubt he was going to come out of retirement to take this bout because of the lucrative financial money that was on offer. And what swung it for me was watching his videos when he was training with Cornelius Bondage, a guy who Jamel Charlo beat for the belt. So that's the pedigree of Cornelius. The way he was throwing his punches, his jab, his uppercuts with his feet coming off the canvas, some of the most pathetic punches that I've ever seen being thrown, ring or sparring whatsoever. I knew that, this guy had absolutely no business in the boxing ring. And Logan Paul has basic boxing skills. Or was it Jake Paul? I can't even fucking remember these clowns.
Jake Paul.
But Jake Paul, sorry, yeah. No, I don't know who the hell this guy is. He's knocked out a basketball player. Seen a little bit of his in-ring craft. He's got a bit of boxing skills, no doubt about it. A little bit of power. The fight was at 190. Ben Askren was cutting weight from hip surgery, which he had in September. So he's coming down from 220, 215. He'd never fought at 190 previously, so it was much higher than what he had fought at when he was a professional mixed martial artist. The fight itself, I could see Ben landing, 1 or 2 punches and Jake running around the ring. Jake caught him with an overhand right, dropped Ben. Ben got up. It looked fine to me, official. I didn't see any damage. I didn't see him too discombobulated not to continue. He looked fine, but the referee just called an end to proceedings. No doubt, there's no doubt that this whole shit show with Logan Paul or Jake Paul in there, they're not gonna railroad whatever momentum he's had and whatever transfer of subscriptions that he brings from social. I ain't got a clue what these guys actually represent. I think it's Pokemon cards or something. I don't know. That's his channel or something. Somebody in the chat can correct me, but I honestly have got no knowledge of their backgrounds, and nor do I have any interest on educating myself with what they represent or reflect. But if the only thing I was interested in was 8 to 15 odds on Jake Paul winning, and so kind of saved me from Majidov getting KO'd early on. So I got to big up Jakey Boy and the referee on.
Yeah.
But to me, it looked like I think Ben Askren may have had a little bit. I don't know whether they just stopped the bout prematurely because they knew Ben. I don't know. That was all choreographed. Whether they felt that Ben was possessing a little bit too much boxing skill and power to cause an upset, given that both of them have got no real experience. I don't know what the fuck that was, or whether he was but he didn't look genuinely hurt to me. You know, we know that Ben had been knocked out by Masvidal and submitted with one arm in the past, so he really had no credibility. But the referee that was a massively premature.
Yeah,
a premature stoppage. But I'm not complaining,
Yeah. Yeah, it looked to me that way too. I mean, the way he stood up, Ben Askren, he stood up, he was looking fresh, as if he ingested a THC-rich muffin and went to bed and then woke up fresh. So yeah, but then the ref asked him to walk, to see that he can stand on his legs. And to me, it kind of looked choreographed, but doesn't matter because I never give a fuck about that fight to begin with. So yeah, by the way, congrats to you on being able to get that money back from
recoup. Yeah, my fantastic run of 18 straight came down when Majidov went down, and so I managed to. I can't believe the odds that was on show. If I'd taken Logan Paul by a knockout official, I would have been up by about 4K. And I should have done in that in hindsight, but Jake Paul to win the bout outright, that was as predictable as it was. I think next time I'm going to remortgage my house and just put everything on. But I think what they're gearing up for is maybe a bout between him and Steve Cunningham. I wouldn't mind seeing, because Steve Cunningham, the disgrace he is that he's clearly shot, but he would knock out both Pauls in the ring simultaneously.
Yeah, he would send them to, because you know how Jake Paul's brother become famous. I mean, he was a big YouTuber, but the thing that blew him out of proportions was he went to Japan to film the dead bodies in the forest where they're committing, where they're killing themselves. And he was taking the videos of it, laughing at them. So Cunningham would send them to that same forest. And but by the way, I clearly didn't give a fuck about the main event, but the Progre and Red Catch or Red Crutch fight, it was, look, I was really not paying attention to it. I wanted to watch it, and my intent was to only pay attention to that fight, but really I was under the influence of what I previously heard from Oscar, that I was not concentrating on the fight itself, but I was seeing Progre constantly landing that overhand left hand, very quick, very sharp hand on Red Catch. He was definitely beating him up, and Red Catch clearly wanted to find a way out of there. And I mean, how embarrassing is that even Snoop Dogg is telling you for half an hour that you basically bitched out and that you're faking. I mean, so that guy, even Red Catch, He's such a bitch, such a clown. I'm fucking glad that he probably won't ever have a single boxing fan watching his fights, deservedly so. What he needs to do is go the fuck out to Ukraine and land the job to some non-government LGBT pro organization there in Ukraine, because that's why he was butthurt with Loma, because he's a pro EU Ukrainian guy.
Yeah.
Loma on the other side, plus probably a couple of other things happened in between them. So he was laughing about Loma and his fight against Teofimo, and was betting about bragging against Lomachenko. And I couldn't stand it. Right after the fight, the day after the fight, I had to go on Twitter and tweet him that he's looking like a fucking punk, like a clown, and deservingly so. The whole world is laughing at him, and man, he's getting trashed on Twitter for a reason, and honestly, I enjoyed it. I mean, the punch that he claimed was a low blow, it was clearly upstairs, aiming at the right side, the left side of Redcatch's body, and Prograve was not even able to land his right uppercut. He just grazed his forearm and didn't even land it on his forearm or his body, and he went down. Such a bitch, that guy. So glad that, I mean, we are talking about a complete clown, and that was such a bitch move. That he clearly wanted to find a way out. He was getting the shit beaten out of him, but corruption. One very last and important point. Right after the fight, the fight was announced as a technical decision, something like that, but today it was, or yesterday it was overturned into a technical KO for Prograde.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So it should. Yeah, because Redcatch he was clearly counted out. He'd been down like a grizzly bear had mauled him. So yeah, he had no aspirations of getting up, even if they'd given him 5 minutes to recover from what may have originally been perceived as a low blow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was the referee. It was, sorry for cutting you off, but it was the referee's mistake, because he said he went to the judges and to Redcatch's corner and told him it was an accidental low blow. So Redcatch, being that the ref mentioned the low blow, was milking it, trying to get out of fight and get the decision, get Prograde disqualified, and yeah. But anyways, it got overturned into a technical knockout.
I mean, Redcatch is an Al Heyman fighter, no? He's a PBC fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Al is no doubt hoping that his pay for this debacle is not put in some sort of a holding account, because as we know, Al Heyman has access to all revenues that a fighter generates. Any PBC fighter, whether they're selling lollipops, it doesn't matter. He gets a piece of everything.
Yeah.
But on that note, on that note, I think that'll cover it. That's the free cards covered. I'm a little bit stretched for time, so I'm not going to get into any previews for next week. I want to thank everybody who joined us for the live YouTube show. Shout out to Sin. Hope you're well. Everybody else who joined us early on, Triple J, Shep, TMT. Who else we got? One of your Francois Brethren's official. Who was that?
Sorry, can't hear you. Well,
Somebody.
Sina Musia, TMT, Triple JJJ, as always. There was Shep as well, the Shepherd of Sounds. And big thanks to anyone and everyone who is going to catch this video after our live transmission. And yeah, I would like to repeat it again. Look, guys, in the description of the video, and once again, I'm gonna post the link in the chat too. Our friend Gonzalo, who's been known to a lot of people in the boxing in YouTube boxing community as one of the panelists on various shows, mainly on PDA. Really great guy, really knowledgeable guy, really sweetheart of a guy, and he's Mexican American, and he was the U.S. Army veteran, but being that he's living overseas, he's not covered, and he has huge bills to pay because his newborn son has had the pulmonary infections of some kind of infection, and so his son's been in the hospital and had a huge bill to pay, at least 13K, but I think it was in fact 18,000 if I'm not wrong. So I'm about to in the description there's a GoFundMe link, so you can donate directly according to your own capabilities, you know. Um, and I'm gonna post it in the chat once again. Um, yeah, so if you have a couple of shekels, you know, it's gonna be for a good cause. I mean, first of all, or when it comes to somebody's children, even if it was my biggest enemy, I would try to help out. But on the opposite, Gonzalo is a great guy. We all like him for his boxing knowledge, for his character, etc. So first of all, I hope that his son, his newborn, will be okay. But in order to, you know, to stay in the hospital, he needs to cover the bills, which got really big. And so you can donate directly to GoFundMe, or figure out some. I mean, once again, I'm gonna repeat it. Another boxing channel, Mark's boxing channel, Unrivaled Boxing Talking News. He's taking all the super chats, and he's been streaming. He will be streaming for a full week, nonstop. He's been streaming for 3 days. He has 4 or 5 more days probably. So to all the people who are only able to donate by super chats, if you donate to his channel, I'm 100% sure that Mark is not playing with that. He's going to send all the money to Gonzalo, to his GoFundMe page. And please, so if you're able to help Gonzalo out, it will be much appreciated.
Okay, and on that note, that's podcast number 23 in the books. Sayonara.